Robbie Lawler vs. Rory MacDonald 2. Lawler and MacDonald had unfinished business after a razor-close fight in 2013. By 2015, Lawler was the welterweight champ, while MacDonald, on a 3-fight win streak, was the #1 contender. What followed was an all-time war. At UFC 189, the pair would go blow for blow, with MacDonald nearly finishing Lawler in round 3 after a head kick rocked the champion. The 4th round was pure attrition, and the stare down at the beginning of round 5 is one of the most iconic moments in UFC history. Early in the 5th, Lawler crushed MacDonald's already broken nose, which caused Rory to crumble, ending the fight. Both fighters left battered and bloodied. Lawler kept his title, and the bout is still regarded as one of the greatest, most violent fights in UFC history. Israel Adesanya vs. Kevin Gastelum. At UFC 236, the interim middleweight belt would be put on the line due to champ Robert Whittaker having an injury. Israel Adesanya, who is undefeated, flashy, and fresh off beating Anderson Silva, would come into the bout as a favorite, while Kevin Gastelum, who is undersized and had a middling record in the division, was heavily overlooked. For 5 rounds, it was war. Gastelum pushed the pace, mixing striking with takedowns, and rocked Adesanya several times. But in round 5, with the fight on the line, Adesanya dug deep, dropping Gastelum multiple times in a stunning final round that sealed his victory. Adesanya would become interim champ and unified the title a few months later. The fight was an instant classic, and many still call it Adesanya's toughest test in the UFC. Cub Swanson vs. Doo Ho Choi. At UFC 206, a ranked fight between Swanson, a battle-tested veteran, and Choi, a rising prospect in the featherweight division, would be made. Expectations for the fight were high, but what followed blew those assumptions out of the water. Both men stood and traded from the opening bell, throwing everything they had. Choi would drop Cub in the first round, but Swanson would recover and start to take control of the fight, landing creative kicks and spinning elbows. Swanson dominated the final round, landing 122 strikes compared to Choi's 87. In the end, Swanson won the decision, but both left with their stocks higher than ever. The bout earned Fight of the Year and still stands as one of the best brawls in UFC history. Forrest Griffin vs. Stephan Bonnar. The Ultimate Fighter Season 1 finale was held at the Cox Pavilion in Las Vegas and featured 2 light heavyweight finalists, Forrest Griffin and Stephan Bonnar. What unfolded was 3 rounds of pure chaos. No grappling, no strategy, just a non-stop slugfest that had fans on their feet. Griffin's volume striking kept Bonnar on the defensive, but Bonnar would land several heavy punches of his own that visibly affected Griffin. At the end of the fight, both men were clearly exhausted, with just their grit and determination keeping them standing. Despite Griffin being declared the winner, UFC President Dana White recognized the exceptional performance of both fighters and awarded Bonnar a UFC contract on the spot. The fight drew over 3 million viewers, significantly boosting the UFC's popularity and led to the approval of additional seasons of The Ultimate Fighter. Anderson Silva vs. Chael Sonnen. Coming into UFC 117 in 2010, Anderson Silva looked untouchable with 6 title defenses and a highlight reel full of knockouts. Sonnen, a trash-talking wrestler, was expected to get steamrolled. Instead, he shocked the world. In the first round, Sonnen would stun Silva with a right hand and take him down, controlling him and landing huge ground and pound strikes on the champion. Throughout the next 4 rounds, Chael would continue to take Silva down and maintain top control, even outstriking the Spider on the feet. However, in the final round of the fight, Silva would miraculously put up a triangle choke on Sonnen while being controlled, and would force the tap with under 2 minutes left in the fight. Despite being outstruck 218-11, Silva's ability to secure a submission in the final round solidified his status as a dominant champion. The bout was later inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame's Fight Wing in 2024, cementing its place in MMA history. Pat Barry vs. Czech Congo. When booked, expectations for this heavyweight clash weren't necessarily the highest, as both Barry and Congo were middling contenders in the division. However, what followed was one of the greatest comeback victories in UFC history. The fight would start with both fighters exchanging leg kicks and cautiously throwing strikes to find their range. But at around the 2-minute mark, Barry would land a powerful right hook that dropped Congo to the canvas. Barry quickly capitalized, delivering several follow-up punches as Congo struggled to recover, with the ref ready to step in at any time. Barry would drop Congo a second time, and just as the fight looked to be stopped, Congo would answer with a devastating right hook, followed with an uppercut that knocked Barry out cold. Kongo's stunning comeback earned him widespread acclaim and the Knockout of the Night bonus. Despite the loss, Barry's performance was also praised for his aggressive approach and sportsmanship. The bout remains a highlight in both fighters' careers and continues to be celebrated by MMA fans worldwide. Gilbert Burns vs. Khamzat Chimaev. Coming into UFC 273, Khamzat Chimaev's hype had reached an all-time high after his impressive submission of Li Jingliang, with many thinking he would easily run through top contender and BJJ black belt Gilbert Burns. Chimaev started aggressively, landing a powerful left jab that dropped Burns late in the round. He followed up with ground and pound, causing a cut on Burns' forehead. Gilbert displayed resilience, surviving the onslaught and ended the round on his feet. Burns then turned the tide in round 2, landing a clean right hook that dropped Chimaev, who looked to stray away from his usual grappling heavy approach. The fight would turn into a dogfight, with Chimaev rallying in round 3 and edging out a razor-close decision. He stayed undefeated, but his aura of invincibility was cracked. Burns lost the fight, but won massive respect and helped to produce one of the greatest 3-round wars in welterweight history. Glover Teixeira vs. Yuri Prochazka. At 42, Glover was the unlikely light heavyweight champion, having just won the belt off Jan Blachowicz. Yuri had just entered the UFC and had just knocked out Dominic Reyes to earn his title shot. Glover initiated the action with early takedowns, controlling Prochazka on the ground and landing ground and pound strikes. Prochazka showcased his striking skills, landing significant punches and kicks, but Teixeira's grappling dominated throughout the course of the fight. Heading into the 5th, Glover was clearly ahead of Prochazka on the scorecards. However, with just 28 seconds left after rocking Yuri, Glover would unfathomably go for a takedown on the stunned Prochazka, which resulted in a scramble that Yuri would win, ending up on Glover's back and submitting the Brazilian with a rear naked choke. It was a stunning finish to an instant classic. Yuri became champ, and Glover's legendary heart won the world over, even in defeat. The fight would earn a place in the UFC Hall of Fame's fight wing in 2024. I hope you guys enjoyed learning about some of the best fights in UFC history. Let me know if I missed any fights, and as always, thank you for watching.